idea is that the message of God's mercy is not the entrance exam for Christianity, but the beating heart of it, and that a Christian needs the gospel just as much as the non-Christian needs the gospel.
Out of my bondage, sorrow and night, Jesus I come, Jesus I come, into thy freedom, gladness and light, Jesus I come to thee.
The vision for Grace Anglican was never really mine. It was a vision that captured my heart in seminary. I grew up in the church, loving the church, but I'd like to think that I never discovered the gospel in all of its radicality and beauty until I was in seminary. I took a few classes that demonstrated to me that I didn't have to have legitimacy based on my own person, efforts, disciplines, work, parenting. But my legitimacy was entirely given to me outside of me, not because of who I was or who I was ever going to be. The vision of the church is that the gospel of God's gratuitous mercy would be exalted in such a way that both Christians who have been wounded by the church would be drawn to Christ in a fresh way, and that people who aren't familiar with the church and are outside of it and don't know God or Christ would be drawn to the same absolving Savior. Several families from the Grove City area were driving all the way down to Cranberry to go to church at St. Christopher's, where Paul Cooper was the rector. They had interest in starting a church plant, and they asked Paul if he would consider doing the grunt work. He thought about being the planter, but he said, "I may have a seminarian for you." So he asked me if I was interested in this plant, and I told him no. He then asked me, "Well, if you don't want to do it, would you at least pray about it, because I think you'd be a good fit for it?" And I said no, because I really didn't want to do it. But my wife was encouraging me. She said, "You are in seminary, and you are training for the Christian ministry. Perhaps it wouldn't hurt you to pray." So we did pray. Monique and I would go on prayer walks, and we would talk about this plant as a real possibility. And we eventually learned that as we were praying, other people were praying for us, and other people were praying about this plant in Slippery Rock far before we knew anything about it. We agreed to do it at the beginning of 2006. We met with that same group of people who were driving from Grove City to Cranberry, and that's basically how things got started.
I've been a Christian for nearly all my life, but I came to Grace in my late 30s and really heard, I think with fresh ears, the gospel. And when I say the gospel, I mean just this idea of that the gospel was for me as a Christian. You know, I tease our pastor, I tease Ethan, that he really is kind of just a one-trick pony. I mean, he has one sermon, you know, and he just finds, you know, 52 ways a year to preach it.
We gather to hear about a Christ who bled, died, who rose again, and who saved the lot of us. Not because we're great, but because he's good. Saved us out of sheer mercy, sheer grace, without contribution.
Every week, we're being reminded through both word and sacrament of this message of consolation, of mercy, and that's been profoundly meaningful to our family.
Ethan is amazing. He's amazingly gifted, I think particularly with the college students. They gravitate toward him. They just love Ethan. So he has a gift with the college students, but also for those of us who have been Christians for many years. His preaching is so gospel-centered. Every week we hear the message that we're part of the problem, but it's not about us. It's all about what God has done for us.
Trinity School for Ministry gave me a very solid background in biblical theology, systematic theology, and pastoral care. Because at Trinity they try to be integrated with those various fields, that was very helpful. I saw how biblical theology and systematic theology and pastoral care all went together. And it was, again, at Trinity where I learned the centrality of the gospel. And that was life-changing, and that informed the conscience of the church. The first service was nerve-wracking and exciting because we didn't know who would come. We simply prayed before the service that God would do something so incredible that we would know it was Him and not just our fumbling efforts. And at least at that first service, we had a very energetic crew of 92 people, and that gave us, I think, a foretaste of what was to come. And it was a very warm and joyful and enthusiastic way to begin.
Jesus, I come to thee. Jesus, I come.